We're conducting town business using remote participation via Zoom. We ask that those of you not recognized by the chair or otherwise engaged in the discussion of the moment, please mute your microphone.
Thank you, Boyd. All right, so today we're continuing with the 2023 budget discussion, covering those areas that we have not yet discussed, and then we can readdress anything that was raised previously that is still an open question. We're hoping to take a vote today, so hopefully we have all the answers that everyone is looking for. And if I could just add, after the budget, I would like to add an item on here just to schedule an executive session meeting in February. So after the budget discussion, we can get to that relative to contract negotiations with the town administrator.
And excuse me, Lynn?
Yes.
Didn't we cap this meeting at an hour and a half today?
4:30?
Didn't we say that in our last meeting?
I don't remember, Cam. Actually, do you have a hard stop at 4:30?
I do. Yeah, okay. I just wrote that in my notes. So but no one else is chiming in. Yeah, we said that, so I'm a little concerned. Only I have that.
Kevin, do you think we can do this?
I think we did talk about that at the last meeting.
So I know there was. I know the last meeting was in 3:30 to 5 with that hard stop for in that meeting, and I know this one we moved it up to 3 just to give it more time because I think originally we were looking to being done by 5:30. We can move through most. I think we can get through the general operating budget. The water, though, is going to be at the end. I am taking that a little bit out of order from the email I sent last week because of Greg Crom's schedule. He's joining us at 4:30 today to talk about the water. So my hope is to get through the general budget, then go to the water thereafter.
Yeah, my recollection was we were going to do 3 to 5. And then we said to make sure that we get through everything, we backed it up from 3:30 to 5 to 3 to 5. So first it was 3:30 to 5, and we backed it up to 3.
All right, well, I'll go till someone bangs me over the head over here. So that's fine.
Okay, if you don't mind then, just so that we're sure to get in the vote, if I could take out of order, just adding in one more meeting to our schedule. We have everybody present. So we'll be entering into contract negotiations with the town administrator. And so I'd like to have an executive session with the board prior to those discussions beginning. We have some information that will be sent out to the board ahead of time, and you can review that and we can come in and discuss it at that time. So I was hoping for February 9th, if that's doable. We have a February 9th work session at 5 o'clock, if we could just add it on to the end.
Good for me.
Does that work for you? I can't tell if Marshall's talking to us or if he's...
Yeah, I was just saying as long as it's an already scheduled meeting, because I wouldn't be able to check my calendar for some non-existent, for some other date. So yes, that's a thumbs up for me.
Okay. If that sounds good with everyone, Boyd, does that work for you?
It's okay with me.
Okay. Could I get a motion then?
Motion to schedule a select board executive sessions meeting on February 9th at 5 p.m. or thereafter.
To discuss the contract negotiations with the town administrator.
The subject, yes, the subject of it was to discuss contract with the town administrator. And
thank you.
The year is 2022.
I'll second
that in the date. I'm sorry.
No problem. Okay, we have a second. So roll call. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Gant?
Aye.
Mr. Hook?
Aye.
And Ms. Bermudez says aye. Thank you. It passes unanimously. All right, Kevin, on to you in the budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everybody. This is our third meeting regarding our general operating budget. I sent an email out a week ago with sort of the order. I'm going to, if it's okay, just adjust it slightly today. We do have our recreation director at the top. She's the last department to present other than the water department. So I was thinking it might be better suited to start with Stephanie Sweeney in the rec department, if that's okay with the rest of the board.
Certainly.
Excellent. So as we all remember, we went through a reorganization process that was has been a real success operationally. And so part of that was with the reorganization of the highway, water, park, and cemetery, is we were able to create a 19-hour position for the recreation component of that. And while also saving from the administrative, the cost, the people cost, about $14,900 annually with that reorganization. The timing of this is really great because it was just this past Friday where we kicked off our new ice rink, and Stephanie has been doing a lot of other things relative to recreation to get us going. And so, although she does have a very basic budget and not too many changes, if any, we did want to have Stephanie join us to kind of talk about, the budget, if there's any, what are costs might look like, or answer any questions the board might have. So Stephanie, I don't know if you want to say a few words and then maybe answer any questions.
Sure. Well, there's not much to say in my budget. I didn't change anything. I didn't ask for an increase. I'm going to try and make it work throughout the next year and just be really creative in how I can still add revenue with very little to get started. So I'm looking into attracting independent contractors to start some programming so they can teach some classes. Looking into partnering some with other groups in the community to do some events and maybe organize some day trips. I've been working closely with Gary and DPW. We've been working hard revamping the field and facility fee structure, their policies, the procedure, and how we're going to work with TAA and other local sports leagues to get them on our fields and using them. So I will actually have that all for you at the February work session. So we can discuss that further then and review it. And and then the survey, I've had that been going. That's available through the 28th of February. And right now we have 120 entries. So people are finding out about it and giving me feedback. And I'm excited to go through that so I can really hone in and get independent contractors and start creating and organizing programming that the community is looking for. So that's what I've got for you so far.
Thank you, Stephanie. Did we put out a post on Facebook about the survey?
I'm not.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I don't know that I've seen one on the residents of Topsfield page or the actual residents of Topsfield page, the two that I utilize. So I will put it out there.
Okay.
Thank you. I can email you a flyer for it, Marshall.
Thank you.
But it has been, so it's located on the website so people can complete it and submit it right on my recreation page. And I have paper copies available as well at the library in COA. Plus there's flyers there where they can scan it on their phone and it'll pop up the resume from my website automatically. It got sent out in one of the school newsletters by Superintendent Morrison. And then the president of the playground committee sent it out. TAA did a blast for me. There was a few other places that we got it out there as well. So I'm making the rounds. Tri-Town Council, they included in their newsletter, and recently they said they would include it again to get another push for February. So been reaching out over there, local businesses. I was promoting it on Friday at our event and letting people know that that's available so we can create some other programming for Topsfield. So.
Great, Stephanie. I think those posts will help. Just taking a look at, on Facebook, taking a look at the reaction to your rink, there were over 500 comments that came in. So people engaged on Facebook. So yeah, you'll probably get some good responses here. I don't know if everybody saw that Wendell Waters had put out an article in the Tri-Town Transcript with 2 video clips from the ice rink opening. So if you haven't seen it, it's a really good article.
Yes, I went and checked it right after I saw you.
Dale News today got some publicity in there as well.
Nice.
Excellent.
Nice.
Stephanie,
Great.
when you were discussing the projects that you're doing, you mentioned the idea of engaging contractors. I didn't really follow what you meant by that, and what's an example of those contractors?
Yeah, independent contractors. So they get hired to run a program. So say archery. It's like a 5-week long session. They meet once a week for a couple hours. I don't know anything about archery. So I would hire someone who has either their own company or they're very knowledgeable in the area. They supply their own equipment. And all I do is, and they instruct the class. I provide space for them and I market for them. So then we break up a percentage of the registrations. So usually it's like a 70-30, 80-20 breakup where they get 70% of the revenue brought in, we get 30. But they instruct the class. And I figured that'd be a great way, since I only work 19 hours a week right now. I can do some internal instructing. I did that at my last department where I ran some programs, but then we also utilized independent contractors who were very knowledgeable in different areas to run sessions for certain programs that people were interested in.
This 70-30 or 80-20, whatever that 30 or 20% goes in the general fund?
That would go in the revolving fund. So the 30% we keep for the recreation department, that would go there. We have a revolving fund set up. So any programs I run, that revenue will come through there and it recycles itself to keep it going.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Any other questions for Stephanie?
Well, I'd just like to ask, since she's only been here for a few weeks, I'd like to ask if she's sorry that she stepped into this thing at this point in time. I hope you're not sorry, but I'm sure you've been relatively busy because you don't have many hours, and you've been doing a lot. So tell me how you feel about that.
I've been really enjoying it so far. I'm not regretting it yet. I'm enjoying it a lot. I've been really enjoying getting to know everyone in the community, slowly but surely getting around and introducing myself and recognizing faces. So I've been getting creative with my hours, and luckily we have some wonderful volunteers that help out with the ice rink. So during the week while I'm here, I check in on the rink and plug in the lights before I leave. But then our volunteers really step up at night and over the weekend to help me out so I can still have some time with my kids and husband. But so I'm really grateful for those people that have stepped up in the community and being willing to help. So especially with such a new department.
I love your idea of the independent contractors because that allows you to scale, since you only have 19 hours. You can coordinate and manage and find interesting opportunities
Right.
and scale up. Ramp up quickly. So
Yeah.
great. Thank you so much. Just because we have a tight time frame, we'll move along, but I appreciate you coming in, Stephanie.
Of course. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Kevin, who's next?
Next, we're just going to cover our go to Veteran Services, which is on page 12 of your budget. And you'll see
Looks
towards
like
the bottom, there's zero change to that budget.
Okay. That's easy.
And then the next one is Soldier and Graves, which is at the bottom. Same thing, no change. If you go to page 13, underneath the Recreation Department, we have the Historical Commission. There is a $100 reduction that we put in there. It's historically not been used, and wanted to just didn't want to draw attention to it.
I don't see that on there.
Oh, sorry. Soldiers and Graves is the same. I moved on to the Historical Commission, Mr. Gant. Sorry, my apologies. Which is on page 13, the following page.
Kevin, I'm sorry. I might be missing this completely. Where is Soldiers and Graves?
Can't hear you, Lynn.
Where is Soldiers and Graves? I can't.
Direct on page 12, directly underneath the Veteran Services.
I just see Holiday on the Green.
Line 746, row 746.
So, okay, that's above Memorial. 746 is. Oh, okay. Oh, there's two separate sections. There's Veteran Services and Memorial Veterans. Okay, sorry, I was in the wrong section.
Yeah, so there's no change on either of those first two veteran ones. We have one more veteran will come up, but the you flip the page to historical underneath recreation is the historical commission. There has been very little expenses to that over the years, and in line with sort of looking at some of our historicals and some of the other accounts, we did reduce that by $100 just to realign it and make it a little bit more. At least $300 should be more than enough, I think, to cover them. And if there's something that comes up that's over that, we could figure out a way to navigate that. But that's why the $100 was taken from there.
I'm sorry, you made it through very fast on those first two. And the Veteran Service Officer, we have an amount of $8,000. It has not been used recently. I recognize the fact that we do have a potential liability, but we don't have any. This specifically comes down to not having a particular person taking or persons accepting money from the state, reference being, for example, a spouse of a veteran that has a need. So we're not actually spending that. It's almost an arbitrary number that it's so accurate at $8,240. Should we, and this is for our discussion here, should we either reduce it or make it zero? And it is unanticipated. Should somebody come forward and say, I'm qualified for these assistance, and I ask you to provide it. I've applied to the state, and so we have to do our portion, the state does their portion, and then go to the FinCom as a reserve fund transfer because it's unanticipated. We have a history now recently of not using it. We don't have to make a decision at this point, but I think it's something that is for consideration.
I do too.
So in essence, it's just sort of an emergency fund in the event somebody does come forward. And it's been since 2018 since someone got $1,591 in benefit distribution or whatever that is.
Yeah, so there's different ways that different communities approach this benefit. We have a number of veterans in this community. My previous experience, is that it depends on sometimes. It could depend on the VSO and how aggressively they promote the different benefits that are available. And it can also mean somebody moves into the community, but it is a state regulated a requirement from the state, and it's a percentage that the state pays and a percentage that the town pays when somebody goes on to the benefits. And so that number's I'll say it's inherited in the sense that was a number that's been used for some time. Sure. And obviously, if you look at the historicals, it hasn't. I have not spoken with our current Veteran Service Officer relative to any change to that number, as it has been pretty consistent for some time. And it is, it should be an easy process if anybody comes in looking for it, especially those who serve our country. If they are eligible for the benefit and they want it, we should move. I do know we could go to a reserve fund transfer through the FinCom. Absolutely. It wouldn't prohibit them from getting that benefit. But it's certainly something to look at. I would certainly want to have a conversation with the VSO if there's consideration on changing that number, who's not at this time available here in the office.
Right. We don't have to make a decision now. And we might do something like go back to the most recent time that we used it and how much we used, the 1,500, as you point out, Cam. So I think that's for consideration. We don't need to make a decision now, but I think it's a reasonable thing to look at. Thank you.
That's a good catch.
Good, thank you. So those are all the categories except for water, which we'll be going through for the first time. So we've discussed everything at least once, Kevin?
Only one was historical. I started on historical. And then I know that it's a very limited budget, very, very, very rarely do they have costs. And then the other one was the Memorial and Veterans Day, which is not changing either. So yeah, everything else is pretty much status quo.
Okay, so we had a couple of items from the last meeting that we had talked about. I'll just reiterate those, see if we need any additional discussion or answers for board members to feel comfortable. Yes, Kevin?
Madam Chair, is it all right? The only thing we haven't touched on, we ran out of time in the first meeting a few weeks ago, was the planner.
Sure.
Would it be helpful if just kind of talk through that position, because it is an above ask, and I want to make sure we can give it time. So
Sure.
What I wanted to say on this is that there's, as we know, Donna Rich here in our office is retiring in April, and she's a very instrumental member of the team. Does a tremendous amount of really great. Oh, she's here. I didn't even know she was here. Hi, Donna. But she will be leaving us, and so we, as a team, Donna, myself, Debbie, talked to Catherine. We were trying to talk through what we want to do moving forward. Anytime there's transition, it's an opportunity to assess what we're doing and if there's a better way to do it. Through those conversations, we realized that really about 32 plus hours of her work is dedicated to project management, IT, facilities, grants, really the work that we're doing here in the office. And the remaining hours are, and it ebbs and flows, but the remaining hours are typically related to supporting the planning board and the zoning board of appeals. It's unusual. Usually most communities have somebody dedicated to those two boards. And when we looked at the whole picture, we looked at the fact that the last 2 years, we did recognize a need for a planner, some support professionally here in the building, with the desire and the vision to try to attract businesses and create new growth opportunities, smart new growth opportunities here in town to offset our taxes. We have somebody here professionally to help us and support us. There's a lot of different things that we're working on, or things that are being required of us, whether it's the Massachusetts, the state of Massachusetts passed a MBTA multifamily zoning district requirement, or they're in the process of doing so, which will have incredible impacts from a planning perspective to the town. And it really takes a dedicated professional to really unravel what that looks like. And we also have a master plan that we've been talking about that we're anticipating to move forward with hopefully soon. And then I've just observed, since I've been here the last 2 years, from an economic development standpoint, affordable housing, MS4, ECDC, there's a number of other places where could be direct support from a professional planner to support the efforts that we're undertaking. And so as we talked through it, we said that existing ask the last 2 years, which we knew we were going to ask for already of the economic development planner, talking with Martha Morrison, talking with the team, thought that we would continue to ask for that position, rename it really to a town planner, but add in the administrative support duties to the planning and zoning board. So we would be able to put those hours in appropriate place with appropriate somebody who's trained as a professional planner to help us with those meetings and helping with decisions and all the administrative component, but also be available for the in-between times that are definitely needed to continue the efforts that we're making here. And so when we removed the planning and zoning support from Donna's position, there is a couple of glaring needs that that we hope that this position will be able to take on. HR is our biggest liability as an organization. It's probably the biggest liability for any organization, but mostly my concern in Topsfield is that we don't have a really good onboarding process when we bring people on. We don't have some of the HR functions that are standard in organizations of 5-10 people. We have an organization of 98 people, and we have support systems that are available to us, but not a consistent path. Some of the observations are when somebody comes in to start the job, we don't have mentoring ships, we don't have support systems or a clear path of onboarding. And so this position, that gap, that need that we have, that we're spending a lot of time on, can be focused by an individual rather than multiple departments that are doing pieces of it. It can be coordinated better. So ultimately, the planner and the position in our office, which isn't changing. It's still the same amount of hours, same amount of dollars, but they are tied together. So I wanted to make that correlation. But the planner is a very similar to what we've asked in the past, only we're now adding a very critical component to that position will be put in a more effective and efficient manner within the planning. That's sort of the framework. I hope that was clear. There's a lot to it, and I'm trying to be concise, but we do have Donna Rich here, who has been living this for a number of years and is available. I don't know if you want to say anything, Donna, or if you just want to be available for questions, but we do have the team here to be able to answer anything that anybody might have.
Thank you. Thank you all. My only comment is that the job is very diverse, the one I do right now, and it's constantly shifting gears between somebody walking in and wanting an in-law apartment, then shifting to ARPA and working on those kinds of things. I think the focus should be on one or the other. I know that this job was originally Roberta Knight's, and if anybody remembers her, she did it like the back of her hand, and it was easy. So for me, it was a little bit more challenging to bring on the land use part. I think it doesn't particularly go together, and I think that both jobs would be better suited if they were spun apart. I think you would get much greater content out of both of them and much more focus. I've done it. I've loved it. It's been great, but I personally would recommend strongly that the two land use be spun off from purchasing, grant writing, all the administrative items that are done under the town administrator's purview. That's my only thing.
Thank you, Donna.
Thanks.
Donna, with the things coming down the pike, the new MBTA district, potentially 1 or 2 40Bs, the old highway garage being sold, and the master plan, right now you do about 8 hours a week for the land use zoning. Do you think we have a good argument to justify moving to 19 hours and increasing the skill set of this planner person coming in to be more focused in the area of zoning and land use?
I agree with that. I think that you would get much more out of both places if you did that, if you spun it off. There's a lot of technical stuff. I mean, I do write decisions for the ZBA, but they're reviewed obviously by the chair. There's a lot that goes on, and there's a lot coming down the pipe, and I agree. 8 to 10 hours, it's ebbs and waves, obviously, due to the fact of how many applications come in. Sometimes the zoning board, as we all know, is an appeal board, so they may not meet forever, but the 40Bs that come in, they have a very short, normally, supposedly, in a perfect world, would have a 6-month time period to get that through their process. So that's very condensed. Can't say that for 57 but whatever. So yeah, I think I agree. It should be 19 hours, and it's ebbs and flows though. Is that what answered your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you. Does the board have any questions about this new position, but with some old activity and some added activity?
I think I remember from a previous meeting that on top of this 19 hours, ARPA was maybe going to cover a balance of 21 hours, or something like that sticking out. So am I wrong, or am I just, what do you got?
No, thank you for pointing that, Mr. Brandt. So when we were talking months ago about this, one of the ideas, it was Martha Morrison's very passionate that this should be a full-time position, the planner that is. And I don't necessarily disagree with her. I mean, if you look at comps in other communities, it's not uncommon to have a full-time planner for a like-sized community. I have done comps of other communities and what they've done. A lot of them, I'd say most of them are about 19 to full-time. That's what I've seen. Some of them have admin assistants as well. We're not looking for that with this position, but the initial thought to try to ensure that we didn't, I'm very sensitive of growing the budget, trying to meet the need and get at least the bare minimum in there at the 19 is really important. But I also recognize the ask of a full-time employee. So knowing that the chairs of the zoning and the planning board were looking for a full-time employee, what we were looking to do, if it's possible, and it's still not determined yet, is to do the 19 within the operating budget to make sure we have some support in perpetuity. And in addition to that, if it's possible, possibly supplement that 19 with ARPA funds to bring some economic development, agricultural components to it. We've had a recent meeting around ARPA and had a conversation on that. We're not certain if that's an eligible type of cost. So that's to be determined, but it's something we're still looking at.
Got it. Thanks.
I would add my comments to what Donna said, and thank you, Donna, very much. As Donna said, Roberta Knight used to handle all this stuff, and she did it because she was handed those various kinds of things because there was nobody else to hand it to in those days, and I'm talking 20 years ago. Fact of the matter is the job has grown. It's gotten more complicated. There's more coming down the road. And with Donna leaving, in my opinion, this is an absolutely opportune time to reorganize that office the way Kevin and his staff thinks it ought to be organized. He's trying to do it on a part-time basis, two positions on a part-time basis to try to preserve the budget. And I think that's admirable. But the fact is, this is a classic opportune time to reorganize that office and get things compartmentalized the way they should have been done in the old days if we'd had the people in the budget to do it. I'm in favor of moving forward with this kind of an operation.
Kevin, just to confirm, the replacement for Donna would be full-time, correct?
Yes.
So Donna's position won't change. This would be the same ask the last 2 years for the economic development planner, but for the planner, and now taking the planning and zoning from the position and putting it with the same ask that we've had the last 2 years at the 19 hours.
So the net difference would be the ask for a part-time person for 19 hours.
Bottom line dollars, that's correct.
Yeah, Kevin, at one point near the end of your comments, you indicated same dollar, same hours. So that was referring, obviously, not to the whole thing based on this question, but you were referring to Donna's position.
Donna, that's right.
The person who comes in to replace Donna, so to speak, with this change, and the major change in the case of Donna position would be that we remove the land use aspects of it, the community development aspects of it, and replace that with HR.
And also, and Don does a great job on it, but we've been so fortunate with the amount of departments that have been getting grants lately that there is a need to ramp up the grant component of the administration. That's already part of the position. However, that has grown in the last couple of years significantly. And I can see this person helping, as Donna has been with the ARPA, which is also very technical reporting and grant process for a number of years that we'll have. So,
yeah,
which was in the job description
done an
anyway.
Amazing job several years ago, as far as I can remember watching, and that was when we built a new town hall, or renovated the town hall. And everything from moving out of this one to moving into another one to making that one work and then moving back into the new one and making all that stuff work. So Donna has been, in many ways, certainly a jack of all trades. As also Roberta had been. The fact of the matter is the town has functioned quite well with the personnel that we have and the number of people that we have. And it's very easy to add additional tasks that would be good to have, nice to have, but do we really have to have them? The town of Topsfield has a problem with our taxes, as we know the tax rate, and we know that the schools are looking for additional dollars for what they have said is extremely important for them. So I, at a very logical level, will say that I do not believe we should be finding ways to add to our structure. We should be finding ways to take our existing structure and try to make it more efficient. And that is to take advantage of whatever the technologies are, whatever they are, or the elimination of some tasks that are nice, but we don't do. We should take a page from that of private industry, where if they have not changed and improved their efficiencies, they're probably out of business because there are competitors. We don't have competitors, so we don't have that particular pressure, but we put that pressure on ourselves by essentially being good stewards of the tax dollars that we get in. So I very much disagree with the idea of adding an additional half-a-time person to do this planning. And some of the wording for the planning, I don't have it right here in front of me, perhaps, but it talks about additional dealing with things with additional services, administration, etc. Very nice way to say do some things. I do have some issues. I didn't spend much time on it because I don't believe we should be going forward with it. But if you want, I do have some markup on the suggested plan or position. I have some concerns about it. And I know that also we have items from Martha on it. Those are a few comments that I have. I have certainly willing to come back at that and discuss it more, but I'll give other people a chance.
Well, I will sound like a broken record yet again when I say that we can be responsible stewards of people's tax dollars, but I want to again remind people that for those tax dollars, people expect services as well. And so there's always this idea that we can just cut, and that is a good way to be a steward of people's tax dollars. Or in this case, it's not cutting, I guess, but not adding. But again, I think what we are talking about adding here are important services, particularly if a planner sees our way to increased commercial tax dollars, which is another way to offset those property tax dollars. So I see the value of this planner, and I would say it is an important decision. And in a very kind of not a direct line way, it can pay for itself if we increase a commercial tax base through better planning.
Yeah, I would just add into that I really believe in trying to find efficiencies. But the bottom line is if you don't reduce the people costs continue to go up each year and the town is going to have to fund it. So you really don't have savings there. You might be able to offer some additional services, but you're not saving anything. It's the same people with benefits going up, salaries going up, expenses going up. So I'm in favor of this position because I think we're at a key point. To Marshall's point about creating revenue, I think this person would help us in generating revenue, which would increase the base and help offset the tax burden onto residents. So if we've got, the opportunity with the old highway garage, if we can help get new businesses into the open spaces that are trying to be leased right now, if there's a way to work with Mr. Flom to improve the property and to do things jointly, whether it's the parklet at the opening to improve the visual look of that mall so that new tenants go in there. There's nobody to do that work. And I think we're at a key point now with our new social media, with our marketing to direct people to the downtown, with the old highway garage being poised to be sold. We have an opportunity here to generate more revenue. And so I would be looking at that side of things without stopping looking at the efficiencies. But I think this is a key turning point for us, especially with the master plan coming on.
I'm going to ask Boyd to back up the reel to some years ago when he explained to many people the effect of commercial development and the tax base. You remember talking about moving a North Shore mall into Topsfield and the effect of that and how it would help our tax base and such?
I was talking about moving a North Shore Mall to Topsfield.
Well, putting in a North Shore Mall type of development and its effect on our taxes. Maybe you don't remember it, and I'll be glad to go through it.
I don't remember it for sure, and I can't imagine even thinking about such a harebrained scheme.
Well, the issue is this. If we put in $50 million of property for commercial base, how much would that affect our taxes? And to put it in somewhat perspective, is probably looking at something like the English Commons to have matched that. It does not make that much of a difference to our tax base when you think, and that is a huge amount of commercial development. We think about $50 million. So we have to be very careful, and I'd be very willing to have my colleagues here sketch out on a piece of paper how much additional commercial they would expect and what the effect on the taxes will be in reducing the taxes on the residential. That's fine. But words are fine. We need some numbers if you believe those things, and I'd like to see the numbers that you recommend.
Just as one example, the meal tax I'll throw out there, when we proposed adding the 0.75% to the state tax, and that would come into us for any food or drink sold in town, that was estimated with the departments in town to be $60,000 that would come in with the existing operations that we have, the fair, Willowdale, Commons, etc. That's $60,000. If we were to attract a couple of more restaurants or like a pub to the old highway garage, if we could get some of those in right there, you could, make a significant impact just from the food and drink. So I don't know about the other revenues, and then we'd have to work with the assessor, but there's opportunity to be had, and to just say to the people in town, well, we're not going to fire anyone. We might get you more services, but your taxes will just keep going up at the rate they're going, because we're really not doing anything different. We're going to have to pay the same number of people, and prices are going to go up. So nothing's going to change. It's kind of like you do the same thing over and over again. And if you don't have any change, you've got to look through another avenue.
I'm certainly looking for change. I'm looking for us to do things more effectively, efficiently.
For instance, what? Because at some point, we talked about this last time. I think the idea that of efficiency that people have is take somebody like Gary and have him do 3 people's jobs instead of just 2 people's jobs. There is a point at which that ends. You can't just continue to rely on the people you have to do more work for the same amount of money or for a standard 2% or what have you. Efficiency runs out at some point. And so if you're asking for specific numbers from us, I'd ask for a specific example from you. What is something we're doing now that we can do even more efficiently than we are right now?
Well, actually, some of the history is the types of things you look at. If you look at, for example, the assessor's office some 6-8 years ago, it was a beehive of activity. It was very difficult for the assessors to get everything done because people were in and out. We moved to Patriot Properties online, and it greatly reduced the number of questions that they had, the work that they had to do, reference to supporting the outside people. One of the things that we may talk about, we talked about this last year, was the idea of trying to use some of the parts of Munis which are self-serve, employee self-serve, vendor self-serve, and the public self-serve, putting those things in, less questions that come into the people have to answer questions, whatever. And so hopefully we could either quote reduce people or at least do some things that we have wanted to do, whatever the case may be. But those are the kinds of efficiencies that we want to drive for. Where are we on doing some of the things that we talked about last year on employee self-serve, for example? That's one. I don't know that these are the best things, but you're asking for an example, Marshall, and there's one that we've talked about. Where are we on that? How is it helping us?
The net of efficiencies like that, Dick, is that you reduce employee headcount. So whatever you're doing, it's with a goal of reducing employee headcount, because that's the only way the monies go down. You can add more services. That's not going to reduce the tax basis, or how much everybody has to pay. The only thing that's going to help the taxpayer reduce their bill is if we fire some people in town hall or teachers or police or fire. That's the only way that the budget's going to go down.
The budget will go down, but isn't it true, Kevin, in your comments on this, I believe you said, you're stunned by the volume of grants, that we're winning. And that's something that's very much on your plate. aren't we, possibly foregoing more grant activity by not having somebody concentrating on grants? Isn't this person going to play a role in the grant process?
Absolutely.
Well, then I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I started going through and adding up all the grants we've received, and that's with one or two people, focused on, not including the two chiefs. But I mean, when we're looking at town administration, and, I just think, wow, what else is out there, that someone working 19 hours a week could potentially find for us? It might be a faster point to revenue and balance sheet than, trying to grind more hours out of an individual.
Yeah, it's for what it's worth too, to give it some relativity, I polled a number of town administrators and managers in the area. All of the ones who responded, they all had at least a 19-hour planner on the most. Manchester has a 30-hour person. West Newbury has a 30-hour person. Boxford has a 40-hour person. It's just some examples, solely dedicated on planning. And some of those don't even support their planning or zoning boards. They're just doing planning work for the projects that come in the MBTA, multifamily zoning project, things of that nature. But I'll just kind of circle back real quick. Our team works incredibly hard, and we all know this. We talk about it, and we do appreciate it tremendously. But one of the things I see with this is it's investing. As costs go up, you need to come up with creative ways like reorganizing departments and sharing services, which we did last year. And Gary, thank you. That doesn't happen without your leadership. The planner, in my mind, not only is it what comparable and an ask that's probably in the low end of what comparable is doing, it is an investment in an opportunity. I get calls all the time, Donna as well, with potential people who want to invest in this community, and we don't have a person who can sit there and walk them through step by step what the process would look like. We try to create the project review team, but this person would head that and organize it and make sure that people know about it. If we have one project or two projects that walk away because they're frustrated that there's no person or persons to help them through the process here at Town Hall, that's lost commercial revenue that we could offset our residential tax base on. And it's only a couple of projects that helps us get there. But, Martha Morrison, our chair of planning, when I spoke with her, we've spoken a number of times on this, and she's fully supportive of the halftime. Again, she wants the full time, but she is fully supportive of the halftime. Her concern was, and she referenced, and she couldn't be here today, unfortunately. She was planning to be, but she had a conflict. She referenced the health department, the Concom, different departments such as that, assess others where they have boards, but they have agents, they have people who are there here at Town Hall full time, supporting their efforts and on the ground, managing the things that ultimately are within their purview. Martha's concern is if we don't have the support, we don't have the people, it's going to fall back on the volunteers, which her concern is that there's so many big items coming up in the pipeline, they just won't be able to do it. And things will fall down and missed opportunities. And I think we really do. Martha and Bob are just so good at what they do and the knowledge they have that sometimes it's, Martha's making those phone calls or picking up the phone sometimes with a question. And that's so unusual that a chair who's going to potentially make a decision on one of these projects is the one who's now tasked with answering the questions. And so, I appreciate all the perspectives. And I do hope that, again, I wanted to say this mostly because I did talk to Martha. She couldn't be her. So I'm trying to be her voice the best I can. I'm not speaking for her, but trying to just articulate some of the thoughts she shared with me. But I appreciate everyone's consideration. It is kind of a transformative time right now, where we can make some strategic investments in our people and how we go about our business. We can see this community, not just from a dollar and cents in a tax base, but the amenities that people want. Bringing in restaurants doesn't have to necessarily be tax based. It can be somebody attracting a really great restaurant.
I would have gotten it. No, but I love. I could just only add that as we move forward and as the world goes forward, more and more things get more complex. And the span and the comprehension of what is required on all of the things that are under my purview, which is building, IT, grant writing, and everything, only gets more complex. And it's just more time consuming. I hope that you consider the planner as a part-time 19-hour and spin it off from this job so that the two positions can be rightfully served and served to the best of the ability of the people that are there.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
Donna, can we entice you to stay a little longer, like a few more years?
No.
Yeah. I think Kevin has tried. I know Boyd has. I'm sorry. I've enjoyed my time here, and I'll say this. I'm not the breadwinner, and I've had a lot of fun. It's been a great run for me with all of you, but sometimes you just got to say, bow out, let somebody else come in. So that's my story, and I'm into it.
Yeah.
I even talked to her husband to try to get them to change their mind. She's not only leaving, she's leaving town.
Well, that's not really, yes, but it's okay. You guys need to move forward.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Donna.
Can I get a sense from the board on their thumbs up or thumbs down on the planner position?
I don't think it's a secret that I'm a fairly hearty 2 thumbs up on this one.
I'm going to say thumbs up. I'm going to say thumbs up because I think Kevin's trying to organize and streamline and limit the number of utility players we have who are doing 50 things versus focusing on a couple. And that feels like a good managerial move to me. So I'm thumbs up.
Thank you, Boyd.
I feel the same way. And like I said before, it seems to me that with Donna leaving, unfortunately, there will be no better time to reorganize that office and institute the position of the planner.
And Dick, I think we know your take on it, but any final thoughts?
Lynn, got to get close to their microphone.
Oh my gosh, I've got to get this computer fixed. Between freezing and me having to push my face.
It might be time.
Yeah. Dick, any final thoughts? Because we kind of know where you stand on this now.
Yeah, I certainly feel uncomfortable with it. I also feel uncomfortable with pushing off the HR. That's been a job of the town administrator since we've had a town administrator. The town administrator has certain tasks and needs to do them. And I would say that passing it down to somebody else, yeah, maybe they'll do some more with it. But that is one of the main jobs of the town administrator and has been. So in general, though, I certainly disagree with trying to do this additional people.
All right, thank you. My own take on it is that we have been streamlining. We continue to, as Kevin talked about, the reorganization, but I think it's time to put a focus now on the revenue generation and what opportunities are there. So I would be in favor of the planner position. And Kevin, as I understand it, you are still responsible for HR. This is just a person who is going to support you in that role.
100%. It's just, it's in essence, 32 plus hours of what Donna's doing right now. We've, with the number of projects, I know she's putting in more than that time. Thank you, Donna. But I do think that there would be a component, just like the IT, just like the facilities, that ultimately we work collaboratively on, where if we have another person who's available to, if something comes up, to be able to address it directly, do a little research into something, just to make sure we have another set of eyes. I will own it at the end of the day, always have, and we'll continue to do a great job on it. But it would certainly be helpful to have, there's multiple pieces of people doing it. To have somebody who's helping streamline some of the processes would be helpful. So I'm not saying those 8 hours are going to be filled with HR. I'm just saying that along with some of the other things that are already happening, that would be a place where I put some more responsibilities.
Thank you. 2 quick points. One is, if anybody, and I know Dick, you had some comments, would like to share on the job descriptions, please share them with Kevin. And then Kevin, one last question. We'd be backfilling Donna before FinCom makes a final call on the budget. So what happens if FinCom says, no, we're not recommending approval of the planner, and we have hired someone that doesn't have a component for planning.
That's the challenge of the timing and the budget process, right? So we have a similar issue with the building inspector and the hours we've talked about. We do need to post that position ideally this week, but we obviously have not have a formal approval of the additional hours. And so that was one item I want to talk about with you folks too, is the planner and with the building inspector and how we go about posting that. But yeah, it's almost one of those situations where we could miss a really great opportunity if we kept on keeping on. And if we got a planner anyway, because we would have asked for it, and all of a sudden the responsibility is that other person in another place, it's not intuitive. It's going to go in the opposite of creating efficiencies and effectiveness, right? So I don't know if right now, today, I have a little bit more time on Donna's retirement than I do with Glenn leaving. So I've been super focused on Glenn and his posting, but that is something I've been thinking about, and maybe we can have some more further conversations before we go to a posting around that and the right steps to take with it.
Okay. So do you want to cover the inspector now then? Any?
Sure. Yeah, no, we had talked about a previous meeting, and I felt we had some great support for the idea of moving the building inspector position, 30-hour position, to a 40-hour position, with the idea being that we post the position. And if we have somebody who comes in at 30 hours, who's really good, there we go. We've been able to do it within that 30. But we do really want to see if we can professionalize it, have somebody full-time, allow us to have more ability to respond and address issues. We've seen how much of a wonderful job Glenn's done over the last 23 years. We've also seen what the last 6 months have looked like. And so we truly want to make sure we're investing in the right places. But Glenn has given us the end of March. And so just from a timing standpoint, we need to post for at least 3 weeks. We then need to interview and then make an offer. And then if it's accepted, assume at least 2 weeks of notice that would be needed, which if we're going to the end of March, that gives us about 2 months realistically to pull that together. So one of the things that we've been talking about is posting the position at 30 plus hours. As we work through the process, we'll get more clarity with the FinCom. And as we talk with people, let them know, are you looking for 30 hours? You're looking for 40 hours? And maybe that will help, depending on the person or persons that come through that we really like, we can make a decision on landing on those final hours. And, but again, it's a budgetary. So my thought was, and I wanted to share with the board, is to post the position at 30 plus hours. And instead of doing a salary, just do a range on the grade 8 position, so people can figure and calculate out what that might look like on an annual basis for a salary. That would give us a little bit of flexibility on that one.
So that will not deter anyone who's looking for 40 hours or a higher salary. It will be encompassing enough that they won't say not of interest.
That's the concern, right? And I'm trying not to get too far ahead on that one, with now having the approvals from the FinCom for the additional hours. So that's the struggle. That's the challenge. And I bring it up because I want to make sure I'm being transparent first and foremost, but also if there's any recommendations, even I welcome them. But the thought right now that we talked about internally was posting at 30 plus. It certainly could deter somebody, but if I posted at 40, it might deter somebody who is looking for 30. And I don't have the approvals for the 40 formally yet either. So I don't know. Still sort of struggling with that. But I had the team here. We're in a work session. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out as well.
Does it hurt us to be flexible? I mean, it doesn't seem like it hurts us to say, depending on the candidate applicant and their desire for hours, that we can float between 30 and 40.
Yes, I think that's absolutely fair, but I'd have to be honest with them and say, we aren't approved for funding of the 40. We can guarantee 30 pending that additional. So you have to take a little bit of leap of faith if you're fixated on that 40 hours, right? unless we can have the FinCom expedite that line item within the budget and get some, without maybe taking the formal vote, or maybe they can get some feedback from them at their next meeting on if they're willing to allow us to post it at the 40, if the feeling is that they're going to support it or not.
Kevin, I think I misspoke. I thought that it was a 40, that we would accept 30, and based on our last meeting, that maybe, it could be done in 30 hours. So I disregard that. I misspoke.
No worries. It was a good question too. I think
that's a great point, Kevin, about reaching out to FinCom to see if we can get their inclination on both, actually, the planner and the inspector.
If the board's supportive of the 40 hours, and like I said, I got the sense that the board was willing to have that conversation, and generally supportive. I can take it to Monday's meeting with the FinCom and ask what their comfort level is. Because I know Tim O'Malley, who's the liaison, has spoken publicly that that position probably should be 40 hours. I don't want to speak for him. He's not here, but I've heard, and I'm paraphrasing, but generally speaking, he's recognized as an example of the building department and the number of permits and the revenues generated, and that there's really should be a consideration to add hours there.
But then the number of permits went up 40 or 50% or something like that compared to this time last year, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it was a significant increase.
Yeah, we've had almost since 2005, the permits have gone, except for 3 years, 100% of the
like 600 to 900.
Yeah. So okay, remember 6.
Yes, and there's been years where
that was what Glenn said, order of magnitude.
And it's ebbed and flowed over the years too. I mean, there's years where we get high numbers, years we get a little bit less, but generally speaking, it's grown over the last. You can imagine.
Market's pretty strong right now. People are pulling permits.
We're busy.
Time to do it.
When Glenn's job with us was a part-time job because he did the work in West Newbury and Topsfield. So we were part of Glenn at that time and had been all along. So it was a part-time job. It was clearly a part-time
And then we moved it up to a 30-hour?
Yes, at some point, somehow it did get moved up to the 30 hours to cover, if you would, the difference. If 20 hours did 600, then 900 would be done with the 30 hours. Order of magnitude. I mean, we're dealing with the same thing. So it's a little harder to justify a 40-hour, except if that's necessary in order to hire somebody. If somebody's not going to do it for 30 hours, then I guess that's what we're forced into. But the logic, doing what Cam was talking about, the logic is everything else being equal is 30 hours.
Yeah, I think the issue was experience and pay. Glenn was saying for someone to come in knowing what they're doing, you need an experienced person. And for that, you have to steal from another town. And to do that, you need to pay to get it. And we were saying, well, we might as well get 40 hours versus 30 if you're going to pay for it anyway. Kevin, I think, the FinCom would be understanding of the time constraint that we're in, both with Donna leaving and Glenn leaving, and us having to make a decision and having to know how to post and dollar amounts to put out there, that they might be receptive to addressing it early.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll
pay for it anyway. What was it?
If we have to pay, let's say, $160,000 to get a good experienced building inspector.
When you're saying you have to pay more.
Right. That we might as well have him for 40 hours a week instead of saying 30 hours a week. It's the experience and pay level that we have to pay for. As Glenn said, you're not going to get them if you underpay.
Right. I remember that.
We did post for the 30 and had that experience obviously too. So we're recovering from that.
Yeah. Okay. The only other thing that I remember, and I think Chief Hovey was going to come back just to give an update. And I know we're in a time constraint with Cam, so if we want to address this one later, but there was some.
I sent out a note. I've got time, Lynn. I've got another easy 20 minutes. I got back. Yep.
Okay. Was just the question about the cloud storage. There were a couple of open questions on that one. So I don't know, Chief, if you're prepared to speak to any of those questions now.
I have some additional information. The the 8760 for the cloud storage. The cloud storage is much more, I guess, exhaustive than I had imagined and stuff. It is sort of trademarked specifically for the GTAC body cameras. So again, we can't share cloud storage with another vendor, or cannot share it with another community. It does a lot more than just stores the information. It is the back end of everything. We will put the camera into a docking station. It will go off into the cloud storage. All of our updates, all of our ongoing support, all of our remote access, all of our permissions will be through the cloud storage. It also is credentialed through CJIS, which is our Criminal Justice Information System, through a government approved access point. It will allow us internet access from anywhere. So remotely, we could sign into it and be able to download information. And it's also supported by GTAC, and it comes with all of the ongoing support for the duration of it. So the cost seems high, but again, that's for 64 gigabytes of storage per unit. I've had extensive conversations with the rep. He believes we may only need about 32, but we decided to go with 60 the first year. If we reduce it down to the 32, it would save about $1,500 a year. That 8760 is a fixed price for 5 years, so there's no cost of living. That's going to be some escalators of 1 or 2 or 3%. So we really know what we're getting ourselves into for a 5-year period of time. It's going to be $8,760 reoccurring cost, and it can only go down because of the storage. I can't imagine that I'm going to use 64 gigabytes of storage on my body camera unless I have it running for all of these meetings that I attend. But other than that, we basically will be probably going down to about 7,200 our second year and ongoing after that. But it is something that is necessary. I also looked into whether we could download the information and have our own server here. They will not support that at all unless we're going to purchase 500 body cameras. That will be the only time that they will give some sort of they'll actually at that level they may consider talking to us about having our own server here. But again, there's redundancies built into all of this, so it's the way to go. There's no other alternative for us. And I've looked at other companies. You know, we're getting these body cameras for $27,500. I looked at Axon, one of the competitors, and they quoted me $92,000 to outfit Topsfield Police Department with cloud storage and the docking stations and all the remote access and all the body cameras. So this is honestly, in my opinion, is the way to go. They've been very responsible. And so unfortunately, I have to ask. It doesn't have to be granted, but again, I fully support this.
Thank you, Chief.
So a couple of things, Chief. One is that the cloud storage software, it's essentially a sole source. Did you say it's part of the body camera company? They're the ones that do all of this. They provide the cloud. They provide the software. It's all part of the same company?
That is correct.
Okay. But at the last piece moment, you offered an alternative type that was much more expensive, but did that include cloud storage forever or something or whatever? We should be looking at the numbers, so to speak, if it includes the cloud storage.
Everything is the cloud storage is not included in the grant. It's always reoccurring and it is separate and independent cost. So that $92,000 was your first year, and then take out the cloud storage reoccurring costs above and beyond that on an ongoing basis. It was so ridiculous of a price. I dismissed their bid right away.
I was just trying to understand this. If $92,000 for some reason did all of our body cameras and quote storage for 10 years, there may be an equation there that says, gee, this is may be a potentially good deal. I don't know. I'm trying to understand what this $92,000 deal is, except if it's the same thing, cameras for cameras, equal, then we should stop the discussion. But if it if it includes
No,
cloud storage for a number of years.
No, we should stop the discussion because there's still above and beyond reoccurring costs above that $92,000 every single year.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief? Okay. Does anyone feel there was anything outstanding from the previous discussions that you'd like to discuss before we talk about a vote on this budget?
Was that the only one that was open, Chief? Was the cloud storage for the cameras?
That actually rose the most discussion, Mr. Gant. There was some other miscellaneous above and beyonds, but I've worked and I'm really studying those, and hopefully I can come back to you and withdraw those. But at this moment, that was the one, that was the focus point, sir.
I think there was one other one, not for Chief, but for the town clerk question. Kevin, was there an ongoing fee for the codification software beyond the initial $7,000 that we'd need to invest?
So we did confirm, what we believed was true, that because we bifurcated the process, it's a flat fee. So whether we keep it the way it is now, or we do the zoning as addition, it's going to be $1,195 annually in today's dollars today for that. It will not increase due to adding the zoning.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, there's a couple other items I just wanted I did a little bit of research on my notes from the last meeting. If I could just maybe
certainly
address those very quickly. Unclassified retirement, the pension. We put on the board docs the most recent valuation study for anyone who would like to review it. We also confirmed that Chuck Costra from Essex Regional Retirement will be presenting on the 31st, the FinCom, available to answer questions, etc. In the meantime, if anyone has any particular specific questions around the retirement and the pension system, he is willing to speak with anybody on that. We can provide that information, the contact information is needed. But I did want to make sure, though, because that was an item that did come up, and there'll be follow-up and an opportunity to talk further about it on Monday at the FinCom meeting. The other one was the unclassified employee benefits. There was a question about the HRA and the inpatient hospital, the $2,000 that's in there. I would actually make the recommendation that we remove the $2,000 from the budget after further research. Talking with our consultant at Maya, there is the possibility that it could be something that the town, but it would be unforeseen because it's been since 2016 that we've had any, since we look back to 2016, have had no claims or use of that funds. So we feel comfortable, the treasurer, the collector, and I, to remove that at this time. And then the Maya health insurance number, we're still working. Jackie's working on, excuse me. Jackie's working right now on identifying the final number. Over the weekend was the MMA conference, and typically shortly thereafter, they provide us with a better percentage increase year over year to work with. So that number could come down before the final version or during the next phase of the budgeting process, depending on the timing. And the last one was the unclassified insurance. Donna did have a chance to talk with our rep at Maya for those particular items. And she did indicate for the time being to leave the number as presented as they work through their final number evaluations. I think those were it that I wanted to make sure I mentioned.
The only other one that I can remember, Kevin, is that when we were talking about adding the 2 firefighters, that there was the $135,000 for those 2 firefighters, and there was also a contingency of $47,000, and it was going to be either or. So I think the discussion was moving forward, having the footnotes for the contingency in the budget if FinCom did not approve the 2 firefighters. It's not both.
That's right.
Requested.
So at the next phase, if as long as we're supportive of bringing the 2 forward, the contingency, if moved past the FinCom and approved by the FinCom, contingency would be removed out of the notes and would be representative in the budget as well as a non-cost.
Any other items for discussion or questions? All right, so right now the budget stands, the basic budget, at a 2.11% increase, and the over ask is 439,000 and change. That would come down potentially by the 47,000 if the firefighters are approved, as well as the other items that you just discussed, Kevin, and possibly the veterans' benefits being reduced after you've had a chance to talk to the VSO and see if he's comfortable with that. So do you need a preliminary vote at this point because things are still in flux? We can always come back and relook at this, but this would be an approval for you to move this version forward to FinCom to begin discussions?
Yeah, I was just thinking the best way to do it. So if we're comfortable with if there's no other items that are discussed or anyone would like to see reduced or anything like that, but we know like the BSO number for the benefits is still out there, we could take a hard look at that and make a recommendation to the FinCom and to the board, even if it's passed now as it's presented, but we still have the next step to make adjustments if needed. So if the board is comfortable with the budget as presented, less the $2,000 under that one account I mentioned, as well as the contingency, knowing that that's out there as well. A vote to move it forward would be appropriate. But if there's any items that the board would like to get more clarity on before they feel 100% comfortable, that's okay too.
And this vote would then allow you to begin discussions with the FinCom saying this has the support of the board, understanding that the 439,000 is in flux, depending on if they are approving or not approving of each individual item.
That's right. That number with the FinCom's, the three-step approach, the budget level, department level budget, now our level budget, and the FinCom. And the FinCom will spend their time looking at the over asking, that 439,000 you mentioned, Madam Chair, and determining what is affordable this year and what's not.
So we've talked about a bunch of things, and there are some things, as you point out, Lynn, that are somewhat open. It needs to get to the FinCom. They need to work on it. We have asked some questions about it. We have some areas that maybe there's some discussion about remaining. The chief said he's going to pull maybe some things out that he's requesting and over ask or whatever the case may be. I would say that we have every reason to forward this as is, with general support, based on the general support for this budget from the select board. You can imagine that if I had to vote on the whole thing as a whole, I would feel uncomfortable with, for example, a planner being in there. And one of the things that we did sometimes is go through the over ask and do that all separately and vote on each one of those. We could do that too. But I think at this juncture, because it's so late in the game now to get this to the FinCom, that we should essentially forward it with the concept that it has the general approval of the Board of Selectmen, and that other thing, and with the implication that other things may change within it.
Yep.
That sounds fine. Do you need a formal vote on that, Kevin? With what Dick said, or should we just note that it has the general support of the board and move along?
I believe in the past we've had a vote. That's my recollection. I mean, we can move it without a vote. Technically, I'm sure if the board would prefer that we move it in that manner, based on the conversation. But
I think it should be noted, because there are just outstanding items and there are some preliminary discussions with the FinCom. Just note the general support as Dick had phrased it, because that gives you, authority, permission, and support just to begin discussions with FinCom. Does the board feel fine with that?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Everything we've discussed is a very small overall percentage conversation. So absolutely.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So moving on to water, is it 4:30? Is it time for Greg?
We've got a few minutes, but I'll let Greg know we're ready for him in case he frees up early.
Okay. In the meantime, does Gary want to give us any update on the storm or what's?
I saw the chalk lines going down the middle of the road, so I know you guys are out there.
They were out yes, they were. We started our pre-treating today. We had to wait a little bit. One of the things we have to be concerned with is relative humidity. I won't bore you, but it was too high this morning. So until that dropped, we had to wait to put that down to make sure we would get the drying effect that we need sooner than having it driven away by cars on it. But then that's down. We started it. We'll be out again tomorrow in preparation for Saturday.
Excuse me.
What are you gonna do this weekend, Gary?
I know what I'm doing on Saturday, so.
Oh yeah.
If anybody would like to come plow, we are short 3 drivers. If you'd like to step in, I can get you in a truck. I have one available.
And it's $5 an hour more than it used to be.
Well, listen, I need to augment my select board salary by a little bit. So
For what you wish for, Marshall.
Just
Yeah.
don't run the truck into the ditch.
Right. It takes a little practice.
It wouldn't be the first time that's happened.
At
Nick.
one, Kevin, at one point during the discussion, you said something about adding something about pensions to the board docs.
Yeah, so there should be a document uploaded by Debbie late this afternoon. It's a, I mean, I can email it as well, but it's
up there, Kevin. Yeah.
okay.
On board
Yeah,
docs?
Yes, the Essex Regional Retirement System. Evaluation and review.
Okay.
If you look
Yeah.
under the budget section, Dick, that's where it is.
Yeah. Oh, I got it. I got it there. Okay. Got it.
Last item.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And it's
we should be sensitive to the fact that I think Greg was intending to come on at 4:30. So I can appreciate that he's maybe in the car or something like that and not able to.
No problem. Just a
I'm
few
going to
minutes away.
excuse myself for a moment because I'm drinking about 3 of these a day. So I'll be right back.
TMI, Marshall.
So in some ways, we might be able to begin discussing the budget before it comes on.
He might want to present it, Dick, and kind of explain.
There he is.
Just so we don't have to review.
Yeah. Much better if he's on. Much better.
He's there.
Hello, Superintendent. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for coming and sharing your budget with us.
Oh, happy to do it.
I don't know, Kevin, if you want any introductory words.
Yeah, just very briefly. So the water budget is completely separate from the general budget. It's based on the ratepayers and the revenues generated from the use of water here in the town. The people who use our water. If you're on a well, you're not a contributing member of the department, and the funds needed to run it. And so there's been a lot of pieces to the budget that you've probably already seen that Greg will walk everyone through, but the capital, anything related to water, goes through the ratepayer. This budget, or the capital budget as well, goes through the ratepayer and the retained earnings. So I just want to make that distinction. And so one thing that Greg and I have talked about the last 2 years as we've worked on this is just trying to be really conscious of the increases year over year. There were some increases due to the water treatment facility and the debt that came on for that facility that had some significant increases year over year. But last year we had a 0% increase, and this year we're looking at, I think, around 2% increase, Greg, on the rates, on what that looks like. So we've been very fortunate to have nominal or no increases the last 2 years. But we have had some difficulties as well with it being, I shouldn't say difficulties, but we had less water use and less revenues come in as a result of the wet season we had last year. It does matter. When it's drier, people use more water. And so there's some factors that play into the operating budget and the revenue projections that are as a result of past performance and projecting out. So just want to thank Greg and his team. Greg's been short-staffed in his department recently from an administrative standpoint. And he's been pulling a lot of different directions in a lot of different times. And he's done a great job to still deliver a very thoughtful budget. So, Greg, thank you. And I'll let you, if you want to walk through your process and then maybe a little bit about the budget and what it looks like this year.
Sure. Just one more thing about the enterprise system that the water department is on. We are still built into the tax rate. It's just our expenses are offset by our revenues. So one of the things we try to avoid is coming up short. If we don't have enough funding to cover our expenses, then the tax side has to cover it, and then we reimburse them later. So it's typically a very conservative estimate of what we're going to collect to make sure that if we do fall short of projections, we still have enough to cover our expenses. So on to the budget. Really, the biggest changes are in salary and wages. Non-union people are penciled in for the 2% per the guidelines. There was some contract negotiations that finished up last summer. So there's some adjustments in the base rates of the union folks built into the wage section. I'm asking for an increase of $16,000 for overtime. And what that entails is we typically hire or have hired out well cleaning and leak detection. We found that we can do the well cleaning ourselves. We had been doing 2 rounds of leak detection a year because of our unaccounted for water. Typically, we only do 1, and we'd like to do more of that in-house as well. We've been finding that it's difficult to find leaks during the day because of ambient noise, lawnmowers, leaf blowers, traffic. It's all done acoustically, listening to hydrants and such. So a lot of this has to be done, not in the middle of the night, but between 10 o'clock and 2 in the morning is probably ideal, where there's not a lot of people out, not a lot of traffic. And those that increase is offset by savings in the other section. In the other section, it's really, for the most part, just some rebalancing and adjustments for prior fiscal year history. I think in conversations with the town accountant, we're going to try and consolidate some line items that were kind of redundant and just combine them into one. So the other section, we're going to be in negative territory compared to last year. The debt section is pretty much set. We have a debt schedule that we have to maintain. And the reserve fund and the unanticipated emergency fund are going down slightly, and that's to accommodate a 2% rate increase at this time. But that's largely built on 6 months of the fiscal 22 water usage history. So as we go through the rest of the year, that will get updated for the rate to determine how much revenue we're likely to take in this year and how much sales we can count on in future years. There's still waiting for that's got some partial information about indirect costs, which are expenses that the town has incurred on behalf of the water department. And right now we'll be looking at fiscal 21. So any portions of salaries, legal fees, our contribution to the telephone system, health insurance, all those things calculated for fiscal 21, and we will reimburse the town for them during fiscal 23. That doesn't show on this sheet, but that does factor into the rates as well.
Okay, any questions for Greg?
So since you just mentioned it, the indirect costs, how did you come up with the 190? Is it % more than we spent this current year?
Yeah, that's based on
You did
an
a
increase
percent,
over past years. It's a guess.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
There was a change in water use, as Kevin said, this year, so far this year, because it's been a wet year.
Yes. It was particularly
At the end
over
of
the
year,
summer.
what do you expect it? How different do you expect it to be from the previous year, as far as the number of gallons? Percentage. Are we talking
I
about
think
1% or 10%?
Overall for the summer months, it looks like we were down about 7.5%. But what's really telling is at the highest rate, the highest tier, we were down about 26% over what we projected. So I think on future projections, we don't, or at least I don't base the rates on the lowest ever revenue producing year. It's more of a, I aim for like 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 years that we might have an issue where we don't cover the projection. So if you take into account this past summer, the projection for next year might be, I think it's 3 million gallons less overall, from 110 million down to 107 million.
Okay. And that's what the rate thing is based on, is 107?
Yes.
Okay.
So between having our budget go down roughly 2% and the rates of the water consumption going down, or projection going down by 3%, that would require essentially a 2% rate increase to cover that difference.
Okay. You mentioned that Catherine had you combine some things. Is that why there's a blank row 65? I can't remember seeing a blank row in a budget. I assume that's what that is. You combine two things into that.
No, I think I was talking about down at the bottom of the section. There's additional equipment and replacement equipment.
Oh yeah.
And basically one's going to be zeroed out, and that money's going to be transferred to the additional equipment line item.
Oh, okay, I see. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Oh, yeah. I see what you're saying. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So it's more along things like that. I'm not exactly sure why there's a blank row in the spreadsheet, but it's
yeah. You normally leave one in. If you pull it out, you leave it in because it has previous year's history that you have to have for the
correct
the mathematics to work. So
right.
No explanation for the blank row. That's okay. So as you point out, you made essentially a transfer from other expenses into the wages. The amount, if I add them up from what we used to pay for leak detection and the other part, leak and whatever, was a total of $14,000. But the salaries, or the overtime wages to cover that, are $16,851. So at a distance, it doesn't look like we're saving. It looks like it's costing us more. But are you going to say that we'll do more of it or something? It'll cost us more.
No, I don't think it's an exact 1-for-1 switch, but also built into that were contract wage increases for the operators. So you have their regular hourly rates went up. Plus, on top of that, we have the well cleaning and the leak detection work. So one way to think of it is
some of that 16,000. If we didn't have the additional if we didn't do the well cleaning and leak detection, for the employees didn't do it, the line would 16,000 increase would not go down. It would be
it would still go up,
the order of $2,000 because that's due to the increase in the wage rate. Thank you.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Greg, any reason, it's positive, but why the electricity and the gas went down? Was it just a better estimate over time, or did you do something different?
Well, that's the one that went down is for the Public Works building.
Yeah.
And, you know, the electricity in the Public Works building, we've had a number of lighting retrofits over the years. There's a lot more LED lights in the building than there used to be. And we recently replaced the heating system. In the furnace that went in is a lot more efficient. It's about maybe a third of the size of the one that was taken out. So given that and the past spending history, I think we don't really need the money for gas.
Nice going, guys.
There are the efficiencies, Dick.
Yes, definitely.
Good work. Good work, Greg.
Thank you.
Well, hard to complain with a negative 2.39% increase.
Oh, excuse me?
Yeah, say that again, Lynn. Yeah.
I said it's
to the mic.
To the mic,
because, it's very hard to complain about this budget because you went down negative 2.39%. So great job.
Thank you.
Any other?
Summary, yeah. In summary, if anybody asked us what the estimate for next year would be as far as rates, we would say 2%.
Correct.
Thank you.
And I think, well, to keep it at, it'll be 2% or less. If it happens to be work out with this budget the way it is and it's over 2%, then I'll probably cut back on the reserve fund or the unanticipated emergency fund to get it down to 2% if it happens to be over.
Okay. And why did that unanticipated emergency go down 30,000? You thought you could do it, so to speak. There was no particular change in something?
No, that's it's kind of it's more flexible than the reserve fund, but it was in some years, those are the two items that we raise or lower to make the rates work.
Okay.
To get when the treatment plant was coming, we used those lines to build a ramp so that instead of having one massive rate increase, we spread it out over a number of years. And that was done by, tinkering with those amounts.
And in part, that's where it's coming down because we're not doing that anymore. Yeah.
And we're trying to keep it down to 2%. So that's why it's going down this year. It can go down a little more if we needed to.
We're talking about unanticipated emergency. Didn't that go up from 100 to 125?
Unanticipated went down from 155 to 125. Is that what you mean?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the rate model. In the rate model, the rate analysis, unanticipated emergency was 100,000 last year, and it's 125 this year. Are those two different?
In here, Lynn.
Yeah, those are last year's. Last year's, I think I just need to update.
Oh, okay.
It's not right in the rate model, but we can fix that.
Okay. The FY2023 number is the same in both, so it's just the history on the rate model.
I think the version of the rate model that you folks have, I had enough time to make sure that the water usage for fiscal 23 would be correct, and that the gain loss for the year would be slightly positive. But there's a lot of changes that still need to be made to it for future years.
Okay. And what's that first line in there, offset?
Basically, there's a difference between what we bill for, which is what the water use projections are based upon, and actually what we collect.
What you bill, yeah.
So that's basically to correct for that difference. So at the end of the fiscal year, we always have money outstanding. And so we're not going to, even though we may bill for everything that we projected, we're not going to be able to collect for it all. And that's to kind of correct for that offset.
Somebody has a leak that's unreasonable, and you give them a credit of half the amount or something like that. Or is this?
No, it's more for if we bill for some, like say in June, we bill for, a third of our customers. Not everybody's going to pay before the end of June.
Oh, got it.
Or some people may not pay until it goes on to their taxes. So it's more to correct for those types of situations.
Thank you.
Timing issue, yeah. Okay, any other questions for Greg on either the rates or the budget? I'm sorry, did you hear me?
Yes.
Any more
Yeah,
questions?
we got you.
No?
No,
Okay.
makes
Thank
sense.
you so much, Greg.
You're welcome.
All your work.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
Okay, Kevin,
night.
anything else on here? Anything to mention before we adjourn?
No, I appreciate it. Again, just action items. We'll get the version 2 omnibus out with the updates on that 2000 that we talked about. We'll get that out back to the board. We'll also get that back over to the FinCom as well. And that's the big one that we'll work on. So, and I'll also on Monday talk with the board about the FinCom around the timing and the posting and the number of hours around the building, as well as the planning and purchasing positions and what that looks like. So keep everyone posted.
So, right, that was already on your to-do before for the veteran benefits.
We discussed the planning job description, and so I'll take my markup and I'll forward that to everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Gann.
Great, thank you, everyone. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
For a second?
Second.
And roll call, Mr. Jackson,
All right.
Mr. Gant,
Aye.
Mr. Hook,
Aye.
Mr. Brown,
Aye.
and Ms. Bermudez is aye, so it passes unanimously. Not too bad.